Hello everyone! Neil back once again with a film review for you. And today I'm going to be taking a look at Elvis from director Baz Luhrmann, and it stars Austin Butler in a star-making turn as Elvis Aaron Presley, and also Tom Hanks playing Colonel Tom Parker. Now, this biopic has some very fine performances, and we do learn some interesting things about the relationship between Presley and Parker. It certainly tells enough of the story, anyway, of Elvis. A lot of people are already familiar with it. Now, before I get too deep into the plot here, I'm going to say spoilers, okay? Spoiler alert, because, yeah, I am going to spoil the hell out of it in order to talk about it in length. So, yeah, here we go. So, the story of a young boy who was raised in a black neighborhood, and this is, back when segregation was really segregation. So it was, tough for a young white kid to get any respect, I guess, from other white kids living in a black neighborhood, unfortunately, back then. But the good news for young Elvis is that he wound up falling in love with the music, the gospel and the rhythm and blues and everything that a lot of his neighbors would be playing, late at night and stuff. And he would sneak out and he would check it out, and very, very inspiring, for Elvis to witness this kind of music and dancing and everything. Grew up idolizing blues musicians and also Captain Marvel Jr. as well. He's a big fan of those old comics, of course. He gets discovered after his first record, All Right Mama, I guess. It becomes a big hit, and that's when Colonel Tom Parker, Hanks in quite a decent amount of makeup here. It's quite realistic, though, I gotta say. He's very chunky in this movie, and that's appropriate, I suppose, for the Colonel. And he decides to manage Elvis upon realizing that this record is getting hot, and it's, the issue early on is that Elvis is just too sexy. He's too much for the 1950s crowd. And so when he first gets up on stage and he starts to perform, he gets a little bit of heckling at the beginning. But of course he shows them, and he breaks into song and he starts gyrating. And some of the women in the crowd just go nuts, and they just get whooped into a frenzy, and this is the kind of thing that we've seen, with many other, boy bands and things like that, these days, and many musicians, male and female, get screaming fans, but this was even before the Beatles, this is even before Beatlemania. This is around the time, where Sinatra maybe, the only one that would command women losing their minds and stuff, but Elvis was, man, he was a big deal, and he really, really impressed everyone there. He certainly impressed Colonel Tom Parker, who would wind up, wanting to get him to make more records and tour around. Now Elvis, his gyrations, they do get him in a bit of trouble, and they actually threaten to throw him in jail. It's pretty ridiculous, right? Pretty quaint by today's standards, certainly, but interesting. He certainly becomes a megastar. He hangs out with legendary musicians like B.B. King and Little Richard. And he's also, he winds up getting drafted in the Army. And that's actually where he meets his future wife, Priscilla Presley, played by Olivia DeJonge, in a very nice performance. And she really fits the role perfectly as well, much like Butler. His mom, though, sadly passes away of alcoholism during this time. Naturally, Elvis and his father are quite devastated by the loss of their mother, who was so supportive. But the good news here for Elvis is that Colonel Parker, he gets Elvis a Hollywood contract to make a multi-picture deal, basically. And it's in these scenes where we are shown just little brief clips of some of the movies that he did, like Blue Hawaii and things like that. Those kind of movies. Man, Austin Butler really looks like the real Elvis here, like with the a little bit of extra makeup on there maybe, and that's why. But he really looks like the same way Elvis did in the movies. So the movies were great for Elvis for a little while, but then by the late 60s or so, his films were no longer that big a draw. So Parker gets Elvis out of the movie business basically, and he winds up getting him this deal in Las Vegas at the International Hotel. And Elvis doesn't really want to do that, not for long anyway. He would rather tour the world, and Parker kind of leads him on into thinking, yes, yes, you'll tour the world. Yeah, you'll tour the world later. Don't worry. It's like, unfortunately, it never happens. So Elvis, he tries to do what he can, and makes the most of it. Really, he does a really good job of pulling off some really great performances here, and in some cases not doing the performance that they ask of him. There was a Christmas special where he was supposed to sing "Santa Claus is Coming to Town," and he is not interested in that. He just wound up doing his hits, and that's what people loved, and the audience responded to that. But Parker, manipulative as always, was just saying, "Oh, it's just the applause sign. They don't really love you doing your old hits. That's old Elvis. We want Elvis to do Christmas songs and new things." And Elvis really doesn't want to do that, of course. So eventually it comes to a head, and Elvis tries to fire the Colonel, but Parker winds up suing him. And this is a huge lawsuit that'll wind up leaving Elvis completely broke and shattered. His father is his business manager, and he's he gives it to Elvis straight, like we're broke, after this lawsuit. Priscilla also, she leaves him with their daughter Lisa Marie over his addiction to prescription drugs. This is something that would eventually result in Elvis taking too many pills and eventually dying of a heart attack in 1977. So before that, luckily, we do get a couple of great TV specials, and his last show is, he's very bloated, he's sweaty, he's very puffy, and yet he still delivers a powerful rendition of Unchained Melody. It's really fascinating. It's actually intercut with real footage of the real Elvis from the real concert, and it's pretty touching. I got to say that part of the film, close to the end, Parker, was accused of really leading Elvis to his death. Working too hard, and then Elvis has got to be on these pills. And the Colonel, he spends his remaining years gambling away his money. He basically starts the film off, and then he ends the film, just talking about Elvis and, I didn't kill Elvis. No, I did so much for the boy. And, but, even though it's interesting that they have Colonel Parker bookending the film, it kind of shows that, this film is really just about their relationship more than any other relationship in the film, really, even with Priscilla. So, the fact that it focuses on that may disappoint some Elvis fans here and there, because it's like, I want to know more about this part of his life or that part of his life. But it's still very good. It's still very rewarding, I would say, for sure. Australian director Baz Luhrmann, he's been known for his musicals like Moulin Rouge and stuff, but this movie is no musical. It's a biopic. Like I said, it's in the vein of Ray, with Jamie Foxx, for example. And just like Ray, Austin Butler he's so good in this role. He should definitely get awards consideration next year for this. It's not always a lock when someone is perfectly cast, and looks just like the character. Like, it's not always a lock for awards, but in this case, I think it's going to be well deserved. He looks like Elvis. He sounds like Elvis. He can even sing like Elvis, apparently. Like, when he gets into those wails, it's like he's it's like, whoa, like, yeah, he's got it. He's nailed it flat. This is Elvis. This is the best performance of Elvis I've ever seen on screen, and we've seen some really great ones over the years. Hanks too is excellent as Colonel Parker, the man, but he's really just, he was just really saw Elvis as his meal ticket, in the end. I don't think that there was ever any real true love of Elvis. It was really just, this is a means to an end, and this is all business and a way of making more and more money, and that's really what the character winds up being as this character of Colonel Parker. He's basically shown to be the antagonist here, quite frankly. And at the same time, though, I got to say about Hank's performance, he's so famous that he may just be a little too recognizable for this role. I think it's just like, well, it's Tom Hanks, and he's put on some pounds, like that's kind of what you're thinking the whole time you're watching it. Also, his accent, it's this Holland accent, it's supposed to be from the Netherlands, and it just seemed a little it just seemed a little odd and strange. And a couple of people were in the audience were like, it's kind of annoying, and I was like, it's not that annoying, but still, it's not great. It's not one of Tom Hanks's most memorable performances, but it is still another great Tom Hanks performance, I thought. By the end of it, it just got so rocky for these two. Elvis just completely hated him. I think the film could have used maybe a bit more laughs and maybe not so much negativity, although it is a drama after all, so there is going to be some hard stuff, some dark stuff, because as famous and as lucky as Elvis sure seemed to be, right? I mean, he went through a lot. He went through a whole hell of a lot, and he was worked to the bone, and it really does open your eyes to how easy a life it seems for the so-called rich and famous, right? But no, it was actually very interesting, and there was one funny line I will say that that Elvis refers to Colonel Parker as Colonel Sanders, so that was funny. But yeah, I could have used a little bit more lightheartedness here and there. I thought could have been more ups with the downs, in terms of a roller coaster kind of drama that way, I thought. But I still think this is Luhrmann's best film since he did William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet back in the mid-90s. I think it's really, really well done. It is seeming like, hey, that we've got the actors, so let's make the movie, but they did it right, and it's nice to hear that Priscilla Presley herself and other family members do praise this film and the performance, and there are some tears here. There's some genuine emotion going on here. I did get a little misty when his mom died, and certainly near the end as well, with the whole breakdown of his relationship with Parker and everything, and yeah, it was tough to watch it sometimes because of that, because the drama was good, the directing was good, and the acting was ever so good. Oh my goodness. So yeah, it's just so great, and the fact that he can sing and perform just like Elvis is just, man, it's just too impressive, to say the least. This film, by the way, was dedicated to the late studio executive Alan Ladd Jr. This was the man basically responsible for 20th Century Fox taking on George Lucas's Star Wars. So he's one of those people we got to thank for Star Wars existing. Quite frankly, Alan Ladd he was an absolute legend in Hollywood, and he passed away in March. So this is a dedication to him. This film. So that's nice as well. So overall, I got to say the film was very impressive, very enjoyable. And another thing I got to say for sure is that it's 2 hours and 40 minutes, but it sure didn't feel like it. This movie didn't lag very much at all. It wasn't boring. I mean, you think a 2.5-hour drama might be potentially slow. Not here. The music really carries it through, and it's fantastic. So I really enjoyed it. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Yeah, it was that darn good. And, to Mr. Baz Luhrmann, well, thank you very much, man. Thank you very much. Yes. It's a wonderful film. Anyone that loves Elvis must watch it. The only question is, are younger audiences going to give a damn? Do they care about Elvis? Well, maybe, maybe not. But, too bad. It's about Elvis, and they did a good job. I thought it was better than Bohemian Rhapsody, and I thought that was a great movie with another great lead performance. So this one's even better, I thought, in my book, as a biopic about the legendary rock and roller. So definitely check it out. I highly recommend it. Thanks for tuning in to this quick review, guys. This is Neil, and until next time, peace.